And all right, let me go to slides, I guess. Do it big. All right, here we are. All right, tonight what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the key facets of lean and agile organization transformation. But before I start with that, one of the things that I want to say is that I've always enjoyed attending these meetups, very simply because over a period of time, I've come to appreciate some of the tips and the insights that I don't think I would have ever come across in my normal reading or talking to other people. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of give back to the community and share some of my tips and insights. So thank you for everybody who's attending tonight. Starting off this thing, one of the things, starting off this presentation, one of the things I do want to point out is that anyone who's involved or going to become involved with an agile transformation, you should be aware that business agility is a journey and not a destination. The only constant is the change because of the business environment we live in today. Now, I want to go ahead and bring your attention to the special chaos report, which was alluded to in the introduction. Essentially, what you're looking at here is the chaos report on project management and also various different projects. They've now moved into the arena of digital transformation projects. The information that you see here is based on data collected between 2000 and 2016. However, I found it to be still very accurate. But what's interesting is that it really hasn't changed. And the reason why I say that is very simply because I get an interview with a lot of companies. And just to go ahead and share one instance with you, I had an interview with a large healthcare company, and the interview was going well and everything. But one of the things that I found interesting was the fact that they had strategy in the job description, and I thought to myself, well, okay, this is a big positive. So what I did was I pointed it out and I asked them, I said, so you're using strategy. How long have you been doing this? When did this start? And the guy thought about it and he says, well, we've been doing this since 2017. Now, this interview took place in the summer of 2021. And I said, well, that's really interesting. Can you tell me what progress you made to date? All of a sudden, the line went silent. And then this individual just went off explaining how big the organization was. And, they do so many things and stuff like that. Now, I could have been nasty and say, well, I understand that, but you're not answering my question. Actually, I didn't say it very simply because his reaction basically told me what I wanted to know. The other thing that I've also noted is that in reading a book that was recently published in 2019, one of the facts that came up in that was a survey by Gardner, and it was a survey of 500 senior executives. And of the 500 executives who were involved with digital strategy across the enterprise, only 27% of those executives had a cohesive plan for that strategy. So I just found it interesting because we're talking about 27% and we're talking about digital transformation projects, and this is saying 28%. So one of the things that I clearly see time and time again is that we're not making the inroads that we should be making on this. So With that said, let's go ahead and move on. One of the big things that I think is missing with the digital transition strategy projects is, what is the goal of any organizational lean/agile transformation? The reason why I include lean in there, because there are a lot of processes that lend themselves well to lean, and then agile processes that lend themselves well to innovation. So one of the things that I discovered was that the goal is not to go agile. Why? Very simply because agile is not a methodology. It's a mindset based on 4 values and 12 principles. The goal is not to implement an agile framework or assemble another Scrum team, because in all honesty, agile tools, teams, and frameworks in and of themselves have no power. The power and the outcome, whether it's positive or negative, depends entirely on their application. So the question, it just begs the question, so what is the real goal? Well, the real goal is to achieve business outcomes. Why would anybody else do a transformation like this if it wasn't to achieve specific business outcomes? And so that is essentially what I am focusing on. Very simply because creating customer value is a central agile principle, and it should be our guidepost for decision making. And the other thing I'll share with is, without customers, there will be no businesses. And we've seen that happen. We've seen a lot of businesses disappear. So moving on, one of the things I can say is that agile transformation it's a very complex issue, okay? And these obstacles to success represent that. Okay, it's easy to see complexity when you're looking at it in the rearview mirror. It's also fairly easy to recognize when you're in the middle of it. But we need to remember one thing: recognition is not action. The real challenge is in dealing with the complexities to lead the teams and the organizations through it. And this is why I share these specific obstacles, because these are the things that are going to lead to complexity. What the real goal here is, and what you really need to understand, is that there's a lot of engagements that lack focus and strategy, as I pointed out in my little story to begin with. The big thing that we need to look at is the problem to be solved. Approaching it from that respect, it requires us to understand where this complexity comes from, why it emerges, and how to use it to make informed decisions. And generally, I look at these obstacles to success as specific areas that I can go ahead and point to in order to make an informed decision and take action for myself and my team. The thing that we need to understand is, and also learn, is to influence essential conditions. We work without authority, so we need to rely on influence in order to go ahead and deal with the complexity and the uncertainty in organizational environments. So let's go ahead and take this from the top. Agile leadership. Leadership has never been about command and control, however you see a lot of it. It's really what it's really about is enabling our people to go ahead and do great work. Unfortunately, management schools, and I can tell you that I'm a PMP, so I've kind of been there, done that. One of the things that I've noticed is they never talk. I see very few areas where they talk about leading people rather than managing it. And it's amazing to go ahead and see the lack of understanding with leadership. I actually did a short engagement with a large bank, and I was brought in as senior Agile coach, and I was basically working with two teams that they were bringing into an Agile train. And what was interesting was they were coming up very nicely. I even came up with some great ideas for how to coach more remotely, more effectively in a remote station. But I'll save that for some other presentation. But the thing was, we had a retrospective, and in the retrospective, we talked about, okay, what went well, what didn't go well, and then, okay, let's talk about it as a team. What as a team can we fix, and what can we not? And I remember bringing up one where they were having a problem with the QA environment, the testing that was going on there. And I says, well, I'm going to need to report this as an impediment. And what shocked me was a number of the team members saying, you can't do that. And I says, why? He says, we're not going to rat out a team. And I said, what do you mean rat out a team? And he says, we're not going to rat them out. And I thought about it, and I says, listen, let me ask questions here. Okay, I've come to know you guys. Okay, you're very knowledgeable, and okay, you're very, very diligent about what you do. Now, the question that I have for you is the team you're talking about, the team that you're worried about, just as knowledgeable and as diligent as you? And the answer came back was, yeah, they are. And I said, so what we have is we have an impediment, but it's not a team impediment. It's a management impediment. It's an impediment of the environment. So what I plan to do is raise this up to management as an environment, as an environmental impediment, very simply because, okay, your teams are knowledgeable, they know how to do the work, but the environment's hindering their success. And I actually shared this with the director of the division that was involved with this. And I was surprised by, I was happy about his reaction to it, very simply because when I relayed the story, he learned something about Agile leadership and the fact that he now knows that what management needs to really focus on is the environments and the impediments caused by the environment and solving it. So it was definitely a leap for him, and it was also a rare opportunity to go ahead and discover that within a retrospective. So with that in mind, one of the things I want to go ahead and go to is the Agile Manifesto. We see this a lot. And I remember one time when I was conducting a briefing with senior management, because this is common. You want to go ahead and make sure that everybody's on board with it. But anyway, I was doing a briefing. I brought this slide up. And what really kind of annoyed me was a senior management said, well, this is really great. However, this slide is more applicable to Scrum teams and operations than leadership. Well, I talked a bit about that and everything, but I'm not going to go into it. But one of the things that it did to me was it basically put me on a mission. And that mission was to go ahead and find a way to show how these values apply to leadership. And I finally found it 3 months ago in the appendix of a book called Doing Agile Right, Transformation Without Chaos. And so what I want to do is look at each value from a leadership perspective moving forward, using the Agile Manifesto as the guide. So moving on, the first one, individuals and interactions over process and tools. Again, one of the nice things I like to emphasize here is that it's never instead, it's over. it doesn't mean that we throw the baby out with the bathwater, because they're equally important. But from a leadership perspective, okay, the leadership's responsibility here is to set a clear ambition of what and why and the metrics for success. But they need to leave the how to the team. We need to empower the teams and believe that the answer lies not with us, but with them. So just to give you an example of why that's so true, again, a situation where I was a naval aviator, and when I went to my first squadron, I was being assigned as an assistant branch officer. Now, as far as the aircraft I flew, I knew all the systems, I knew all the emergency procedures. But when I went to the avionics branch, okay, if they lifted up the hood and asked me to look at the inertial navigation system and point it out, I don't think I could. I also know that they were trained. Navy's good about schools, and there's also on-the-job learning. So the question to me, okay, as an ensign at the time, was, assistant branch officer, what is my job? And it came to me at that point, I can't show them how, I can't teach them. So what is my job? My job is to go ahead and enable them to succeed. In looking at that, one of the things that I realized is a lot of times the problems that came up had nothing to do with the knowledge or the expertise of the team. It had to do with the environment, whether they didn't get something from supply or whatever. But that, to me, was the epiphany that occurred back in the 80s. And I just carried it forward with me ever since. As a matter of fact, that was one of the major turning points that when Agile came about, I dove right in. Okay, moving on to number 2, working solutions over excessive documentation. Okay, the idea of engaging in good enough working solutions versus demanding the perfect ones. The other thing about protecting the team so that they can focus, and that as managers, as leadership, we rapidly unblock those key impediments. What we're talking about here is that we don't need a perfect solution because we don't know what it is. But working with client feedback, we'll find the optimal solution, and we'll find it sooner rather than trying to find it without any information. The other thing is that impediments are an indication of environmental issue, and that is something that we need to key in and then resolve those issues in order to allow the team to do their jobs. Moving on to 3, customer engagement over rigid contracts. We encourage teams to seek out feedback from a diverse set of customers and promote a culture of rapid adaptation to customer feedback. And we believe things always can improve. The beauty of this is that with a diverse set of feedback from clientele, we can end up providing a solution for a larger customer set. And that basically, in turn, allows us to go ahead and provide bigger or better outcomes. Makes perfect sense. And it's something that management needs to be looking at rather than getting stuck into the details. Okay, now on to the last value. Responding to change over following the plan. Okay, the idea here is to go ahead and celebrate learning and create a safe environment for teams to take prudent risks and test for unconventional hypotheses. Essentially, what we're looking here is at a safe and collaborative environment to learn and explore. And the results of those explorations could very well lead to a better product or something that will allow a team to do something easier, faster, or better. So there's always a positive there. But the thing is, unless they're allowed to explore, we will never find those things. The other things we need to look at as well is embracing that ruthless and constant prioritization and stop the activities that are not yielding results within a defined time frame. What we're talking about here is we're talking about wasting money. And when you look at the general annual budget cycles, you could be wasting money and resources on dead ends for months, very simply because there's not going to be a review to the end of the month. So the kicker here is we really need to go ahead and pay attention to what's going on and understand that what we're talking about here is we're talking about business. We're not talking about IT. We're talking about a partnership between IT and business needs to do their part. Okay, so we talked about these new leadership values. Let's talk about the team. Who's in the team? Okay, the Agile leadership team composition essentially involves these 6 areas. The executives, finance and legal, business operations, human resources and administration, as well as the rest of them. Leadership is responsible for making commitments regarding the transition and addressing environmental impediments. Finance, they're going to be, and legal, will be involved with budgeting, changing portfolio management to better fit a lean and agile environment, and also deal with legal matters regarding contracts that may need to be changed or adjusted as a result of a lean and agile environment. Okay, business operations, they provide and manage the products or services. They need to be part of this. And I know people look at human resources and administration and say, well, what are they doing in here? Well, they're critical. We're talking about hiring, job descriptions, interviews, training, employee evaluations. Okay, these are important things that are addressed and still need to be addressed in an agile environment. Marketing and product services / development. Okay, these are the people that create new products and the services to meet customer demands. Information technology and security. These are the people that basically create the software that aids business in conducting business. We're talking about agile DevOps teams, we're talking about architectural runways, and we're also talking about security of our systems. So with that composition, how will they function in this new environment? Leadership, the executive level, is responsible for identifying the digital transition strategy. It's not to say that they aren't going to go ahead and get help, but they need to participate in it. And they also need to ensure that it maintains its cohesiveness. Otherwise, there's going to be a problem. Budgeting and lean portfolio management, these are things that will change so that we clearly understand what value is being delivered by the cost incurred, which isn't always readily seen in a normal environment. And the other thing is having to deal with changes to contractual issues. Business operations, they're going to be tied in to the adopting effective lean and agile practices regarding products and services. Human resources, hiring practices, job descriptions, interviews, training, employee evaluations, all designed for a lean agile environment. They're going to play a big part in this. As far as marketing and product services development, we're looking at the need to move into utilizing design thinking for creation of new products and using agile practices to work with IT to build these products or services. As far as information technology and security, one of the things that we're looking at is basically the creation of Agile DevOps teams. solid architectural runways for delivering software, and more importantly, addressing security up front. One of the things that always used to annoy me about software development is that they go ahead and do the security checks and scans after the software has been developed. Why can't they tell us up front what it is? It almost feels like you're in a speed trap, and there's a cop there just waiting to go ahead and issue a ticket, and go ahead and create additional funding for the police department. When what we could do is go ahead and identify those things up front and build them into our code. So with that said, I want to go ahead and take one item and do a little deeper dive. And the one that I want to dive into is HR and admin. So what's really involved here? Just to give you an idea of how things could change. Revising performance appraisals for teams. In other words, instead of doing individual appraisals, what we want to do is team level appraisals rather than individual appraisals. Why? Very simply because every team that I have worked with, one of the things that I pointed out, regardless of where I was, is that outside of your immediate superiors and people within the team, they're only going to know you by your team name, whether it's Hadoken, SpaceX, or whatever. And so just like baseball, just like just like football, okay, you're going to succeed or fail as a team. So it's important that they do understand that. Now, on a team member level, one of the things that we want to do is we don't want to leave them out in the cold. We want to allow them to establish their own personal goals, where progress can be discussed on a quarterly basis for continued growth. And these can be 15-minute conversations held monthly with their manager. So the bottom line is that we look at it from a team level, and we also look at it from individuals in terms of them growing. Because again, what the individual team levels strive to makes the team as a whole better. The other thing that we're also looking at is revised managerial performance appraisals. Now, a lot of times what we're dealing with silos. We're dealing with competition between managers. What we need to do is change the game. The appraisals need to be based on how well their teams perform and how effective the manager has been in handling impediments that have hindered the teams, and also what they've done to support team growth. The next one, revised descriptions so they can effectively be used as a guide for seeking out and hiring appropriate personnel. This one really hits home for me because I'm constantly getting hit with job descriptions where I'm looking at them and I'm seeing duties in there that are coming from 2 or 3 different positions than the position that they're talking about. And so that's something that really needs to be corrected. As a matter of fact, I just found it so crazy. I actually wrote an article on LinkedIn called My Agile Christmas List, because what I was complaining about was what the recruiters were doing or what the companies were doing in terms of throwing in positions, throwing duties from different positions. One of the things that I can tell you is that when you're looking at a project manager and you're looking at a scrum master, they can't be both. The scrum master is somebody who guides the team. The team trusts the scrum master, and if they don't, the scrum master is going to be very ineffective. And consequently, so he cannot be a scrum master and also a manager. because that's the other side. And so there's a psychological conflict that comes in there and a lack of trust that can ensue. So the thing is, we need to understand that these positions and what they do are important, and we can't dilute them by making wild changes to it without really giving it any thought. The other thing that I also look at is, okay, if the team is, okay, if everybody on the team, okay, succeeds or fails as a team, I think it's critical that for the interview process of hiring a new team member should include interviews with the Scrum Master and also the current team members, because they know, the Scrum Master and current team members will know what skills are missing or what do we need some stronger experience in, so that we know when we bring this person on board, okay, this individual can go ahead and really contribute. And then, of course, the manager, so that he's aware of this individual and have an understanding of where he's coming from, and so that they can discuss personal growth moving forward. So I took this one because a lot of people, whenever they go ahead and look at HR or admin and everything, they just blow through this. This has nothing to do with Agile or Lean or anything like that. Oh, it has a lot to do with it. And we've just covered a small part. Okay, now we need to go ahead and look at value stream mapping. Why are we talking value stream mapping? Well, one of the things that I've noted is that when we go ahead and look at successful Agile transformations, it's amazing the number of small organizations or startup organizations that adopted the Lean Agile approach and transformed very early are succeeding like nobody's business. Spotify is an excellent example of that. But the reason why I'm looking at value stream mapping is very simply because this is something that we could do to go ahead and give a large company who honestly wants to do an Agile transformation the same benefit that a small startup would have. One of the things I do know is that executives can be an impatient lots, and oftentimes their expectations can be a bit on the unrealistic side. The value stream mapping is an excellent way to manage the progress of your organizational transformation, demonstrating a series of business outcomes on a more realistic schedule. Because in defining a business outcome, what we're talking about is a value stream that goes from one end to the other, from the time a customer or something comes up till the time it's delivered. And since that's a value stream, it's cutting across the organization. That is definitely an organizational improvement. And by doing it this way, we can have a series of business outcomes done on a more realistic schedule and show that continuous improvement. The other thing it'll also show is how technology is an investment rather than a cost overhead. Oh, sorry. So what are value streams? Essentially, they're the same things as processes. However, the focus is on identifying waste and providing opportunities for continual improvements. In a value stream, we visualize all the steps, manual and automated, needed to transform a specific service or need into an actual value for the customer, and taking into account that it's not just the end customer, it's also the internal and external stakeholders that we work with where they are customers for the IT teams. The other thing is that this is an exercise that can't be done down deep in the organization with a development team or infrastructure team. This can only happen with appropriate involvement from all top, mid, and operational level stakeholders. Why? Because we're talking business here. And we're talking about leveraging technology to go ahead and improve and be competitive. Now, let's talk a little bit about waste. Generally, when you see this, a lot of people look at this from the perspective of, okay, just traditional environments where not necessarily IT. Okay, transport, you're talking about trucks, moving things here, moving things there. However, in the IT environment, one of the things that you're looking is, how do you get your software into production? That is transport. And so how long does it take? What's the release? What is the release cycle on? Do you have continuous delivery? These are things that we go ahead and look at. Over-processing, okay? In a normal environment, okay, you created too many of these products. Here, what we're talking about is too many manual processes that could be dealt with on an automated basis. Waiting, okay, that's easily done in a normal environment and also in the IT environment. Anytime you have to hand something off to another team and then get it back from them in order to finish it up, you're waiting. So any handoffs are basically causing delays. When we go ahead and look at motion, we're talking about, okay, moving stuff here, moving stuff there, but in an IT environment, what we're really talking about is we're talking about not having to repeat processes. This is why there's a big shift to go ahead and address security and compliance up front instead of at the end of the process, so that we don't end up having to repeat the process again because we need to make changes in code. Let's capture that information and code it in from the get-go. This way you don't have this motion going back and forth. As far as inventory, okay, generally too much product sitting in a warehouse, not making money. For us, it's more about not deploying code regularly. Understand, the more you deploy code and test it and have it working, it makes it easier to go ahead and catch any mistakes you may have, and that you're improving the system incrementally rather than the big bang. So you don't want to go ahead and build up a whole bunch of code before deploying it. You should be able to deploy it on a regular basis. I mean, at least in a continuous integration environment, you commit at least once a day, if not more. And on some organizations, actually do it 1,000 times a day. So that's really what we're talking about when we talk about inventory here. Technical defects. That is technical debt, no question about it. Now, we may not go ahead and count it as value when we're doing, when we have a Scrum team and they're delivering things. But one of the things that I've always done with my Scrum teams is I would set aside a certain amount of time to focus on defects. We wouldn't get credit for it and everything, but that would get fixed. Very simply because the longer you wait, the more difficult it is to go ahead and resolve it. Overproduction. Again, creating too much product. But what I've seen in software development is a programmer who is programming to his ego rather than the requirement. And they go ahead and they code beyond the functionality because I really want to go ahead and make it make this look really good, and they're doing it more for themselves than satisfying the requirement that needs to be done. If it has a potential to go ahead and do something, that's one thing, but it's something that should be discussed with the customer. And we can do it in an agile environment. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and address value streams and transformation. Okay, we need to go ahead. How do we plan out these value streams for this? Well, first of all, what we want to do is create a list of your services and then prioritize those products or services according to the value they represent to the organization. You want to do it, you want to identify all the value streams you have. Because then what you're going to do is you're going to address the value, and according to the value, you're going to prioritize which ones you're going to tackle first. So for the second one, you're going to go ahead and conduct the value stream mapping based on what's in the list. Okay, as you go through that, you're going to make sure you have a good understanding of the steps in each of the value streams, automated and manual, and your steps that your organization uses to deliver a specific service or provide a specific outcome for your customers. You also want to identify the systems that are integral to the value stream, the steps in the value stream. And you'll see an example of that in the next slide. And then, okay, bringing the core group for this specific value stream and start identifying and working on solutions to mitigate or eliminate bottlenecks and manual processes in their value stream. And once you know the systems, you can start identifying people who develop and support systems in the value stream, and then appropriately reconfigure teams so that they have fewer dependencies on other teams, thus allowing them to rapidly develop and maintain solutions. Remember, if you've got a handoff, there's a delay there. So we hit the waiting. So what does this look like? Here's a composite value stream that addresses both operational and technical aspects. As you can see, this is a favorite operational one because everybody knows about loans. Getting them, having them processed, having to pay them off. And so it rings home for for everybody. So it's a great example. But underneath that, you have other things that occur, channels that attract customers, a loan origination system, okay, credit scoring. And then you also have core banking, which may be included in single system or multiple systems. What we want to know is we want to know those systems and what they're supporting within the value stream. And then, of course, like I said, make sure that we have the right people in the team to go ahead and support the system and improvements, and also for maintenance. And so this pretty much says it all. And the fact that it's a composite, it's not a single value stream, it's composite, consisting of operational and technical aspects. And one of the things that I do like about the value streams is getting business and IT to work together, because when they complete that value stream and they've made the change to it, they can both take credit for the success. They partnered in success. And this is very important in terms of addressing that cultural change that you're looking for in an organization. That, I didn't quite catch you on that. So anyway, as I said, we're essentially looking at using this method to also create a partnership between business and IT. Now, in regards to the transition roadmap, what we're going to do is we're using this to go ahead and create a series of successes, right? We're going to take the highest priority value stream, work on it, and then demonstrate the organizational improvement that represents. And essentially, I refer to this as the experiment, because this is where you do a lot of your learning moving forward, so that when you're ready to go, when this is finished, you're ready to go to the next one. What you'll be doing is you'll be applying the lessons learned and moving forward. Again, and eventually what you'll do is you'll go ahead and reach a point where essentially what you're doing is you're normalizing steps. And each time you do it, it's going to take a little less time because you've been through it before, you've thought it out, and so you make improvements not only in the system, but how you execute it. Now, what we need to do is we need to go ahead and look at financing this transition roadmap. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at financing from an Agile perspective, and we're also going to talk a little bit about transformation and sustainment, because that needs to be funded as well. So moving on, one of the things that we want to look at is we want to look at changing the budgeting or the portfolio management to go ahead and fund products or services instead of projects, because their measures of success are clearer and more objective. And if you're tying it to a value stream, it's a lot easier to see what's actually happening. Because with the value streams, you're focusing on value and maximizing it. So it requires the planning and budgeting approach that's specifically designed to support each value stream. And the beauty of it is you've got real data on the value stream performance that's going to allow leaders to make educated decisions about future allocations on funding based on income generated and cost incurred. Now, you'll probably start out with an annual funding as a starting point, but it's really critical here to go ahead and review on a quarterly basis to reallocate funds more frequently based on ventures that perform well, and the possibility of considering termination of funding on less successful efforts. So this is where, by using this approach, leadership can go ahead and see the return on investment for the improvements that occur. With the Big Bang Theory, that is just not happening. And so they're getting very frustrated, very simply because they're not seeing what they were told that they were going to see. Well, that's because they're not managing the money to address the way they're now doing work. So now what we'll do, the other thing I want to talk about is budgeting for centers that introduce and sustain our new way of working, such as Agile Transformation Offices and Centers of Excellence. So, the Agile Transformation Office is essentially, that is the group that basically kicks this off. They're basically communicating the need for business agility and competitive environment. They're providing lean and agile training at all levels within the organization. And that's needed at all levels so that the organization can work in a cohesive manner. They're also coaching and integrating lean agile practices and fostering communities of practice for business and IT. Not just one or the other. And in some respects, some of those communities may involve both. And then, of course, they need to learn how to do conduct value stream workshops in order to go ahead and teach people how to facilitate value stream mapping. And then also looking at creating the necessary alignment around the organizational changes that will occur, as well as establishing the objective metrics. Now, one of the things that I will tell you is that after the major transformation has been completed, what normally happens is the ATO morphs into a lean center of excellence or lean agile center of excellence, because from that point, their objective changes. Their objective is not building or making this transformation happen. It's sustainment of quality, uniform, agile practices to ensure consistent and high-level performances. And this can be done by 1 to 3 operating models. You can go ahead and centralize it, decentralize it, or one of the favorite ones is a hub and spoke. It just depends on how the organization is set up organizationally and also geographically. The COE provides agile and lean training to all levels within the organization, which essentially was done by the ATO before, so that they can continue to work in a cohesive manner. Sustainment is all about maintaining the cohesiveness in the way of our working, because people forget personal turnovers take place at all levels. People come and go. Changing technologies, that's going to affect you. And also providing new customer products or services. Those are things that change. It's not one and done. Where at the, that once you've done it, okay, well, we don't have to worry about this anymore. No, this basically needs some care and feeding. And one of the things that I will say is that a LACE metric of success should be the success of the teams that they support. And their goal should be to enable those teams to do great work. It's been my experience that agile transformation in organizations that did not include a true lean agile center of excellence, or those organizations where the agile practices and mindsets eventually deteriorated to a level where the organizational became agile for show only, and they've lost their competitive edge to deliver quality service or products or experiences in a timely manner. So that is very critical. Now, one of the things I would like to do is share some recommendations with you. Okay, this is the book, Doing Agile Right, Transformation Without Chaos. As a matter of fact, I connected with Daryl Rigby via LinkedIn to go ahead and make sure that I could share some of the information with them. But it's an excellent book. And like I said, the appendix has a lot of information that you can readily use. The second book is a little heavier reading, but given the fact that we need to go ahead and accomplish things through influence, it's worth a read. I just wouldn't sit down and do it all at once. As a matter of fact, I just backed off to a point where I'm just reading a chapter once or every 1 or 2 days to get through the book. I know there's some repetitive, but it kind of reaffirms the concept that they talk about. And when you first read it, you're going to see examples and you say, well, what does this have to do with agile transformation? Well, it doesn't. It has to do with influencing, but it gives you some good examples, and it's definitely worth the read if you're very serious about doing agile transformations as basically as a business. So my final words, okay, the takeaway message. Like I said, lean agile transformation at the organizational level do not happen overnight. And we've seen plenty of evidence of that, even in the failed ones. And it's because it's a journey, not a project. We need to get away from that project mindset. The other thing is trying to execute a lean agile transformation on an organizational wide level. Do this all at once, it's doomed to failure. I use a big bang very simply because it's going to explode. The interview I told you about with that large healthcare organization, they really weren't transforming. What they were doing was spending a lot of money on training, on tools, and clients, but they couldn't tell whether or not they made any progress or whether they delivered any value. But they definitely ran up a bill. Okay, using value streams to help you define that roadmap will allow you to plan and execute this transformation in a manner that will demonstrate a series of organizational level successes on an incremental basis, but also in a way that management will understand. You know, it's not IT, this is business. So if you go ahead and do it logically and they understand it, it's a lot easier to get them to buy into it. And then the last thing is, okay, that series of organizational level successes will not only satisfy management's desire to see continuing progress, it also helps promote and maintain that cultural change that you've worked on making happen. So that is my takeaway message from the presentation. Okay, so let me go ahead and stop sharing.
All right, so before I'm going to get ready to share, we do have a question from our LinkedIn Live. It says, is value by product line?
Mm-hmm. What specifically is the question?
That was just the question. Let me see if she can. All she had asked was, is value by product line was her question.
Yeah, essentially what you want to do is, what are you delivering? What's going, okay, what is the customer getting in the end? Because like I said, okay, you know, without customers, there is no business. So if you're doing a product, yes. If you're doing a service, yes, absolutely. It needs to run across the organization as a whole. And by doing so, not only do you get an idea of what you're delivering, what's involved with it, but also the value to the company in terms of success and income.
Okay, then we have, is this LACE, L-A-C-E, and then it says LACE equals COE. And then it says, I guess this is aligned towards SAFE. And these are all a whole bunch of questions together.
Okay, well, let me just go ahead and put it. Some people call the center of excellence a center of excellence because for some reason they don't like the term LACE. So what they'll do is they'll call it a COA. The reason the LACE actually stands for Lean Agile Center of Excellence. But I was told to, you know, that it'd be better off if I just went ahead and call it a COE. I have no problem calling it LACE, but that's what it is. And the big thing that you're looking at, regardless of whether it's COE, LACE, or whatever, it's all about sustainment. Because understand, business is constantly changing. So sustainment is critical. And that's a lot of things, that is one thing that a lot of people overlook.
And then same person, what if SAFE is not the case? What would you recommend?
It doesn't have to be safe. What, you know, like I said, it's one of the problems that I've seen, okay, a lot of businesses or consulting groups come up with their own structure, you know, and basically try to go ahead and sell it to the client. I am an SPC. I became a safe agilist back in January 2013. I've been an SPC for the last few years. But, okay, SAFE is a tool. It's an application. And I can tell you that in 2013, one of the things I was looking at was SAFE. One of the early adopters of SAFE was John Deere, basically the tractor company that builds the farm equipment. Another one was Nokia. Now, what was interesting was John Deere excelled using SAFE. Inoki is no longer around. So again, it's a situation where the framework and the agile tools are not the solution. Okay, it's the appropriate application that will either be positive or negative. And I can tell you one thing about John Deere. I recently came across an article where they were working on something with the supply chain, and they weren't using SAFe. They actually, in this particular case, Scrum at Scale was the better choice in terms of the framework to solve the problem. Again, it goes back to solving the problem and not just slapping a framework in there just because it works somewhere else. Because Nokia found out that while it worked well for John Deere, it did nothing for them. They eventually went out of business and were subsumed by basically Microsoft when they were trying to do their phones. So again, the tools and the frameworks in and of themselves have no power. It's the appropriate application, positive or negative, that are going to, you're either going to succeed or fail. It's just understanding, what is the problem you're trying to solve and what's the best way to go about solving it.
Okay, does anybody else have any more questions? We have, aren't value streams directed at different customer needs and situations that the firm's products or services meet? I ask this because that's not typically what everyone involved focuses on. We sell cars, phones, health insurance, not safety, fractionalist communication, sense of health.
Like I said, you need to go ahead. That's Pat.
Yes.
Okay, Pat, that needs to, essentially what you need to do there is figure out exactly what you're selling. I mean, you can do the same thing with insurance. You know, it's a service, it's a product, but how do you get it there? And that's what's really key. And like I said, in some cases, some of the frameworks don't necessarily work that well because they aren't doing business at that level. And the other thing that SAFe works well with is if you have suppliers and you're plugging them in as partners, where you have a solution track. But I've also seen a lot of situations where SAFe was never implemented properly and still isn't implemented properly. So the point is, the most important thing is, regardless of the framework, is what's the problem to be solved and what is the best way to go ahead and solve it. And one of the things that I will tell you is that what will happen is as you have the different value streams that occur, you may have teams that are basically providing maintenance support to multiple streams because it makes sense to go ahead and do that. But the biggest thing is making sure that, okay, it's a business value, that something is actually happening, because again, when we're implementing this in any organization, if business doesn't understand the value that it'll bring, they're not going to sign off on it. And, you know, relying on say, hey, well, this is the greatest thing in IT. Well, gee whiz, that's just wonderful. But what is it going to do for me? And that's what's critical is the lack of focus and no valid strategy to go ahead and identify and solve the problem that needs to be solved. That's basically your guidepost.